Hello, hello, hello out there in podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror and science fiction and the key elements that lift those special works into a higher stratosphere of the genre. I'm here with my good friend, David Horton. Hey, David, how are you?
I am well. How are you, Tim?
I'm doing well. As we record this, it is into spring here, and the pollen is pretty heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Of course, you can't go out without a decon suit anyway, so pollen shouldn't bother you.
So allergies and viral apocalypse excluded, I'm great.
Thriving everywhere.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So what's been going on in your genre-related week? I'm sure you've had some time to watch some stuff.
I did actually. It was very interesting. I got a one of those bulk email things, blah blah blah, that said CBS All Access is free this month, for our COVID survivors or whatever, sort of thing. And I thought, I've put off CBS All Access, as everybody knows, especially if you listen to Dilithium Chamber, because I've watched several episodes of Discovery and loathed it very badly. And they just started the Picard just finished its first season. And I think to kind of boost it and everything else, they, essentially gave everybody a free month of CBS Access if you want to do it. So I thought, I could do that and then just discontinue it and be done with it and all that kind of stuff like people do. So I broke down and did it, and I was going to give Picard 2 episodes and then, give up on it. But actually, it ended up being pretty good. I have to admit, it wasn't. It was nowhere near as terrible as Discovery is. It's a little padded. It's a little long. It could have been a 4-hour miniseries rather than a 10-hour story arc.
Yeah, but he's older, so he moves slower.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, Picard takes longer to get to the ready room. But it had a lot of stuff that I liked. It had a terrible theme song. I admit that too, just like the past, the Discovery did as well. But I don't think this one had as much Alex Kurtzman help, so it has a chance of surviving.
Is he the J.J. Abrams of CBS or something?
Of Star Trek. Yes, he's the J.J. He's the new Berman of Star Trek. He basically oversees the entire franchise now.
Okay.
So and he's not good in my opinion.
So he's doing the movies as well, in conjunction with JJ?
The movies aren't being done at all right now.
Right.
So,
but that was Paramount for a while, right?
Right. But now that's all been bought out, so it's all under one umbrella now.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize.
So, that's really the only thing I don't like. One of the things I do not like about Picard is it nods to the JJ verse. And kind of says that the JJ movies are canon, which I disagree with. But it deals with the Romulans, which is one of my favorite race. That's cool.
You're talking about Picard.
The cameo. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
The cameos are not pandering, so that's good. I mean, they're there. They go to a bar and somebody orders Tranya, or something. So it's not. They're just kind of little things like that, but not we love our fans. We're going to give you this kind of thing. So I would recommend it. If you're a Star Trek fan, it's worth a watch. I definitely like it better than the last 2 mainstream series. I like it better, or the middle two. I like it better than Deep Space, and I like it better than Voyager. So there you go. That's what I've been doing. I survived Picard.
Well, I had considered doing the freebie, but I want to wait until they offer The Stand, which I don't know if it's finished and ready to go or if they're stalled too because of the viral apocalypse. But
okay.
But as soon as The Stand airs, if they're going to offer some kind of free, even if it's a 7-day thing, I'll do it then. and watch that. So,
well, until Stan comes out, you could watch. I just thought of this. Today you could watch.
You mean the new one?
Because it's on. Yeah, it's
Have
on
you
CBS
tried it?
All Access. No, I haven't tried it yet.
Okay. I'm just curious. I don't know if it's any good or not. I mean, it is Jordan Peele, right? Or at least he's got something to do with it. He's hosting it.
Well, he's the executive producer and the host. So
okay, good.
Yeah,
that would be worthwhile.
Yeah,
to check out.
So. Mm-hmm. What about you? What have you been doing?
Well, I happen to be flipping through, as most of America right now, my options for streaming, and I wanted to see what movies were available on some platforms I don't normally look at movies, and one of them was Hulu. And as I was flipping through, I was shocked to see they had the new version of Pet Sematary. So I'm a huge fan of that book. Not a big fan of the original movie, so I was curious to see what they had done with this second movie. And it is not good.
Oh, really?
I have to say, and I think I texted you about halfway through it, the beginning was fantastic. So it's one of those Wendell movies that could have been, but they fucked it up majorly in the second half. The first half is just genuinely creepy. Everything is very familiar. It's just very much like the novel. So, I mean, even the cat, the cat comes back and is all, weird and dirty and a little less picture perfect than that gray one they used in the 80s version.
What's the cat's name? Church?
Church? Yeah. And I liked John Lithgow as Judd. He was not bad. He was not overplayed, whereas, Fred Gwynne kind of overplayed the main accent a bit.
Yeah.
And and the mood. Oh, the Pascal stuff with the kid getting rushed in after being hit by the car. All that stuff was really, really good. And I don't even know that I object to the change they made by making it Ellie instead of Gage that gets hurt. It's just what they do with it afterwards that's terrible. And it just spirals out, and you're just like 3/4 of the way in, you're like, I don't give a fuck anymore. I really don't. So sorry, whoever directed that, but you screwed up. That's what I've been doing. That's what I did this week anyway. I'm still watching my regular shows that are at least still airing. Survivor and Walking Dead, and now Top Chef Masters is on, so I'm happy.
Well, as long as Legoland stays on, I'll be happy.
Yeah. So that brings us to our subject matter of today. This is the first of our 3-episode grand finale to season 2, and numero uno of a double feature in your territory. Would you like to engage the listeners with what we are going to talk about?
Yes. Hopefully, you know what we're going to talk about. But in case we're surprising you, and you haven't read anything, we are covering a double feature of George Miller's, the beginning of his franchise opus, Road Warrior, and we're starting with Mad Max, the first one, which was done in 1979, and we're also going to be talking about the sequel to that, Mad Max, ironically, 2, Road Warrior. Both of them basically a little unprecedented when they came out, I think. They were a surprise to everyone, including Miller, with their popularity and launching Mel Gibson to be an international star, and just everything that they had to do with, and then branching into this huge franchise, which is now even in the... supposedly he is writing another one following Fury Road, and he's in pre-production for that one, which would be great. One of the few franchises that I'll just say as a little note for me that I actually didn't mind the change in casting of a franchise. So that's kind of interesting for me.
No, me either. Tom wants his face. He's good.
Yeah.
Hardy,
very much.
Tom Hardy, yeah.
Well, let's start at the beginning. So let's go back in time to 1979 when this movie, you pesky kids, when this movie was released. Nobody really at that time had heard of an actor named Mel Gibson, but he ended up being very, very well. Like I said, this kind of made him an international star. So that's
well.
what
I mean, he's got that face. He's like a Burt Reynolds. You knew he was going to be huge because he's just a really good-looking guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And just as a brief synopsis, here's a couple that I found that I thought were really good. One is so simple. This is the one from IMDb. In a self-destroying world, a vengeful Australian policeman sets out to stop a violent motorcycle gang. That's your movie. There you go.
Yeah, that's terrible.
And I was like, okay, no, not really. I mean, that is it, but it's basically a lot more than that. And one of the things I think that made this franchise work is that it's so simple in what he tells, but the way he tells it is so memorable. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I've got a lot of thoughts on this as well that we'll probably get into a little later. But yeah. It's a simple premise put together by some very convicted people.
Yeah, but storyline then, I made a better synopsis and kind of, in my opinion, is that it is set in Australia. It's a dystopian, near distant future where crime has become a little bit rampant. There are gangs roaming around. And basically you're following a highway patrolman, essentially, and his partner at first, who are basically chasing this one particular gang that is terrorizing the countryside. It ends up being a very 60s and 70s vengeance story about halfway through, because the patrolman, whose name is Max, ends up his friend gets hurt, then his wife and son get killed by this gang, so naturally he's on a vengeance quest to the end. It is told, though, extremely, like we said, kind of extremely simplistically, but also very uniquely and memorable. I mean, I just want to go back to that because the way Miller shoots things, the way he tells the story, what he expects you to know from the story without telling you, is kind of interesting. I mean, there is no real prologue at the beginning of Mad Max. You're just suddenly dumped into this world. Mm-hmm. It has, as you and I have talked about several this season, it has a relatively small cast. If you exclude extras and stuntmen and all that, basically the people who have dialogue is a very minimal, small cast. And the plot is very, very straightforward. There's not a lot of twists or angles or weirdness to this. This is basically you're following one man's journey, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, it's a vengeance story, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about history a little bit before we go into all the details. So when was the first time you ever saw this movie?
Interesting you should ask. I'm certain I've told you this story before, but I think it bears sharing because I find it very funny. I was fortunate to see this movie at the Princess Theater in Morristown on a big screen. I was underage because it was R-rated, and it came out in 79 or 80, so I would have been 14 or 15, and I think you had to be 16 to see an R.
I thought it was 17.
Was it 17? Maybe it was 17. No,
yeah.
That was NC-17.
Because remember when they came out with the rating, it was NC-17.
Okay. I thought that it was a year old or younger, but anyway, regardless. Me, my friend Mark Graves, and Susan Foster, you remember Kathy Foster, her little sister, went to see Humanoids from the Deep, which was playing at the Princess.
My gosh.
And when they never carded you, because technically you didn't have to have a driver's license to get into a movie theater, but they would ask you if you were old enough to get in to see an R-rated movie. And they asked Mark, and he said yes. And they asked me, and I said yes. And they asked Susan, and she said no. And they wouldn't let any of us in. So we were really pissed at Susan. So we went home. The next day, Mark and I decided we're going to go see Humanoids from the Deep without Susan Foster. So we go back down to the Princess Theater. Are you 16 or 17? We said yes. Yes. They let us in. We sit down. The movie starts, and it's not Humanoids from the Deep. The marquee had changed, and we didn't even notice, and it was Mad Max. And it didn't matter.
Really?
Yes, it didn't even matter because we were sucked into that movie so fast. And in retrospect, compared to Humanoids from the Deep, Mad Max is awesome, and Humanoids is terrible. So there you go.
got so lucky.
That's how I saw Mad Max. Complete and total surprise on a giant screen with the crazy Japanese-like dubbing that they did to try to get rid of the Australian accents. That's how I saw it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is cool. That's really cool.
So did you happen to see it on a screen as well?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it when it came out in 79 and was blown away by it because I was never a car guy.
Yeah, me either.
And I got the impression going into this that you kind of had to be, oh, you're going to have to love the cars like Fast and Furious or something like that, but not. That's really a minor thing to it. Cars are a huge part of this whole franchise, or machines are in general, but you don't have to be like a mechanic or an aficionado or go to the rod runs every week to appreciate it, kind of thing. Really liked the vengeance angle of it. Thought Max was great. Really liked the direction of it. And have been really pleased with all of the sequels. Even Thunderdome, as panned as it normally gets, has some good stuff.
It has some good stuff. It's the most commercial of the three because of Turner and the soundtrack and stuff. But it's definitely my least favorite.
Yeah. But it continues the mythos. It continues the storytelling. Mm-hmm. So, and I guess that's a good bridge for us because production wise or backstory for this particular movie. Mm-hmm. I believe there's a great documentary out about Mad Max itself, which is incredible and well done.
It's called The Madness of Max.
Yes, and you can find it online. It's really good. It's got some really cool stuff to it. But I haven't seen it in a while, and I didn't rewatch it for this podcast. But so maybe you can correct me when I make errors. But I think this was Miller's first movie, right? He hadn't done a movie before this.
No, not that I'm aware of. He was a doctor.
Right. This reminded me, one of the keys that I wanted to open with was this reminded me or had the feel to me of Evil Dead. Just this visionary guy and his buddies, everything else wanting to do this movie he's always wanted to do. He gets money he borrows money and maxes credit cards and does all of that to try to get this done, and his vision pays off in the end.
Well,
kind of thing.
It's funny that you say that, and I'll probably come back to this, but one of the other things that I wanted to say after watching that documentary was I never realized, I mean, it's obviously an influential film, but I never realized that it is right along the lines of Night of the Living Dead and The Evil Dead as far as being one of those tiny films that a bunch of, and I said convicted earlier, and I may have used the wrong word. I meant more like committed or devoted. That a very small group of people just got behind and were like, we're going to make this movie, and we're going to make a good movie. And it ends up just being this huge landmark in the canon of genre films. This and sci-fi, obviously, and Night of the Living Dead and Evil Dead and horror movies. Same premise. I mean, and you, fortunately, were a part of one of those. You were a part of Evil Dead. But can you imagine being a part of this movie? Man, that would have been fucking cool. With all those stunts and stuff. Yeah. It's just, it's like you said. It was a little, and apparently he financed a lot of it by working ER gigs for 3 months, driving an ambulance. And
I mean, this
ER
was
stuff.
made for, in 79 especially, this was made for like nothing. It was made for like $350,000.
Exactly.
It was filmed in Australia. I even saw a thing that said that most of the extras were only paid in beer.
Mel Gibson was only paid $10,000, and in that documentary, they showed him get a front of $50. Like he had to sign it that he had received $50 in advance. That was hilarious to me.
And if you watch the documentary or you read trivia online or anything else, I mean, so much of it reminded me of the way we used to do all of our short films together, but also the way, Sam filmed Evil Dead, in my experience, which was all this, what we call guerrilla filmmaking.
Yep.
I mean, you didn't get permission to use that particular location, so you ran in, you shot it real quick, and you got out.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did with this. And they talk about they use the exact term, guerrilla filmmaking. There's a scene where Johnny the Kid is on a phone on a bridge, like a payphone. He breaks into it and uses it, and he's doing it really fast. Well, they said that the reason behind that is because they didn't have permission to film that, and he had to get out of there before somebody saw him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I thought was funny. Yeah.
Well, and like everything, they bonded as a group. The gang themselves and the cast and the filmmakers all kind of bonded on this share. Like you said, I think convicted was actually a better word.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Because they had this feel of, we're going to do this. We're all in this together. We're gonna make this happen, kind of thing.
I thought I was implying that they were prisoners. They were convicted. Sorry, I was losing the dual meaning of the word, but yeah.
There's something to be said for going into the genre of filmmaking without knowing all of the rules or all the textbook ways of doing stuff, because I think you tend to improvise more, and that either pays off really, really well or really, really bad, as we know from both horror and science fiction movies that are lower budget. But you don't have the stuntmen, so you have to, either train your actors or you have to work around it film-wise. You don't have the location, you can't build the sets you want, so you have to use practical locations and redress them to be what you want.
Right. You can't get name actors, or if you do, they're going to be television actors. They're not going to be, marquee names.
Right. I mean, I remember reading, or it may have been in that documentary, but, even when they were breaking down when there's a scene where I think the grandmother or Max's mother-in-law actually
May
boards up the gang in an outbuilding or garage or something like that, and they have to kick their way through the door. Well, they didn't have a fake door, so they literally had to kick a real door down.
That's great.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was, but going back on our thing, I think the overall overriding visionary of this is Miller and what he wanted to do and how he wanted to tell his story. I mean, I remember I had seen. One of the keys for me is, and not a list of them, but all those 60s and 70s race movies, whether it's Death Race 2000 or all of those, we've got race things.
You stole my key.
But
I'm just kidding.
But none of them told the story as well as Miller does. I mean, you really feel like you are literally inches away from the edge of the asphalt going at 80 miles an hour or 100 miles an hour.
You
kind
do.
Of thing.
And there's reasons for that, too. I mean, as far as his lens choice and like you said, guerrilla filmmaking also included dangerous filmmaking with people leaning out of car doors and stuff or on back of motorcycles while they're filming this stuff. So, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it was his overall guiding, this is the way I want to shoot this is the way I want to do this, and then knowing how to use that editing and that timing of things to keep the adrenaline and the energy of this entire movie going forward. Mm-hmm. Do you have any casting stuff for this particular one?
I do have a little bit. It's not going to be very familiar stuff because these are Australian people, but some of it I found a little interesting. The first choice for Mad Max himself, other than Mel Gibson, actually Mel Gibson kind of fell into the part. The first choice was an Irish actor named James Healy. Does that ring a bell with you? Probably not.
Vaguely.
He's primarily a television actor, but he did cross over to America and do American television. He was even on Dynasty as one of Alexis's love interests or something. Anyway, that fell through, I guess. Jessie, who is Mel Gibson's wife, or should I say Max's wife, originally it was rumored that Judy Davis was going to play her, but the reason for that rumor is because Gibson and Bisley, who played Goose, were classmates at the Australian Dramatic Academy, and Judy Davis was one of their classmates. So they all were in drama school at the time they made this movie. I thought that was very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, the reason Mel got the part is because Bisley, who plays Goose, was already cast and talked him into auditioning. And he went. And actually, the first time he was there was at Bisley's audition, and he had been in a bar fight, and his face was all effed up. So he didn't audition. But then when he came back all healed and they saw how pretty he was, they were like, "Oh, wait, you could be the lead." And he ended up getting the part, which I think is hilarious because knowing, Mel Gibson's spotted reputation as it is, I think it's telling that he had been in a bar fight back then. Toecutter, one of my favorite characters, is played by Hugh Keays-Byrne. He says he modeled the role after Genghis Khan. He and Tim Burns, who played Johnny the Boy, are both classically trained Shakespearean actors, which explains a lot. I was like, no wonder he chews up the screen whenever he's on it, because he is fantastic. And then I mentioned that Steve Bisley played Goose and was Mel Gibson's classmate. Apparently an Australian TV actor named Frankie J. Holden had auditioned, but after the audition, he kind of dissed the script in front of George Miller, and he didn't get cast. So they could have had a named TV guy, and he went with someone else because he didn't like him.
Good.
I thought that was kind of cool. And then other than that, I've just got the people who played, like Fifi was Roger Ward, and Bubba Zanetti was Jeff Perry, and he's one of my favorites. So, but that's all I really have as far as casting.
It's interesting because you said it. One of my things of the franchise is Miller is really cool at these enigmatic, I don't know where that comes from, but I like it, names.
Yeah.
From Toecutter, Bubba Zanetti, Humungus,
Knight Rider.
Knight Rider,
which is out of an AC/DC song, I believe.
Probably.
Well, he quotes AC/DC lyrics
sense.
in that first chase. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
I'm a rocker, I'm a roller, I'm a ride out of controller. He says that lyric, word for word in the
so it must be.
Yeah. Well, they're an Australian band.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and even up till Fury Road, the villain in Fury Road is Immortan Joe. I mean, what does that mean? We don't know, but it's a cool name, and we'll remember it. Yeah. And Furiosa
sounds like something with death, Mort.
Yeah,
strange.
Immortan Joe. That sort of thing. So it's. But basically what drives this entire movie, it's not necessarily that the performances or the acting is that great. I think it's all competent. Some of it, like you said, is over the top at times and chewing the scenery, but it's kind of the way the characters are. They are overtly over the top and adrenalized and, bigger than normal kind of thing. But it's the overall pacing, the emotional story we get into and follow, and just the way he edits and paces it is what I think keeps this first movie going. I mean, it could have easily just been either a violence fest, a big chase movie, or nothing without the little moments and beats that he takes. Showing Max go to the hospital, and showing Max and her having a quiet time at home, so we get to know a little bit of them and the kid and all that. Rather than it just being, I think if this movie was made in present day, it would just be action piece after action piece after action piece, never a chance to breathe. And I've said that before on this podcast, and you know it, but that's the way I feel about the way filmmakers nowadays aren't learning how to pace a story.
Right. And if you have motivation, and you're going to show it briefly, it needs to be very intense. Like somebody burning upside down in a car, or somebody losing their hand for doing a stupid lasso trick. Yeah. You know.
And that's a good segue to like favorite scenes. You know, I don't think one of my favorite scenes from this movie has always been the whole giving him the option, handcuffing him to the car that is starting to catch on fire, and say, it'll take you this long to cut through your wrist or this long to cut through the handcuffs. You decide, and just walk away. Just giving him the option was just, and the way then it cuts to him just getting ready to drive away, and then you see the explosion.
And you
in the
don't know what happened. You strongly suspect.
Right.
I think that's part of the another gold nugget of this movie. It's the ending. It's because it ends on that question, and and also the future. You don't know what it's going to happen. It's just everybody's dead. He drives off in his car. That's it.
Right. The subtitle to this could have been "A Man in His Car." Because that's basically that's how it starts and that's how it ends.
Yeah.
And that's how most of these movies end up going. Too. I like the another memorable scene to me is the way they show the death of his wife and child, with just the motorcycles running by, and then the child's shoe and the ball come bouncing.
And I'll throw the key out there now. It's very Pet Sematary, like I was discussing earlier. When Gage gets hit by the truck, he just finds the tennis shoe in the book, or he just is holding the tennis shoe. But I love how they do it.
Highway's dangerous. Mm-hmm. What about you? Other favorite scenes you might have, or anything? For Mad Max, not for the sequel yet. Oh my gosh, I love the scene where they first come into town, and they're going before they go to the train station to pick up Knight Rider's body, and they're all just it's all the motorcycles just coming together. It's like death comes to town or whatever. Love that. I do love. Yeah, it's a very Hell's Angel fear scene. You know.
Oh, I mean,
all of the people that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of movie keys in here. I'm telling you, and you just made me think of a different one. The motivation again for vengeance. The fact that Johnny the boy has to be initiated into the gang, and Bubba is over him, and I guess Toecutter sees something that Bubba doesn't see, and then Johnny ends up having a vengeance with Goose, and Goose ends up in the car upside down with the gas, and Toecutter is persuading him to throw the match. That scene right there is extremely memorable and extremely horrifying. And a lot of reason why this movie got some flack when it came out was violence. But as they're quick to point out, most of the violence is implied. We just mentioned that scene where all you see is the tennis shoe and the ball rolling in the road, but the mother and the son are dead. Same with when Goose gets burned in the car. The match is tossed, you see the flames, and that's it. You don't see anything else. Later on in the hospital, you see his burnt hand, but that's it.
Right. That's another good scene. Hospital's a good scene.
Yeah.
Yep.
Love the scene with Toecutter and the ice cream cone. Absolutely just perfection. His acting, and then the timing of her knee to his groin, and the expression on his face, it's just priceless. I mean, it's scary and funny at the exact same time.
Yes. So true.
I mean, I could go on and on and on. There's just so many great scenes. And that's what makes this movie good. And even George Miller mentions it either in the documentary or something that I read, where he said, what do you do when you see a movie? Remember that scene when? Remember that scene when? He's like, that's how we went into making this movie. Let's just have a bunch of great scenes and we'll make the story work around them. And that's exactly how they made this film. And that's why there's so many great scenes in it. But there's a lot of homage to other movies as well, which we'll get into in the Keys.
Well, we could probably go there, I think, because we've got 2 to cover.
That's
so
true.
We want to make sure we have time for Road Warrior as well. So, I mean, I do agree with you that I think there's a lot of homages.
There are. And one more scene that is probably one of my favorites that I'll say before we segue into Keys is when Max is confronting Toecutter and Bubba in the road, and his arm has been run over, his knee has been shot out, and Bubba is getting ready to close in on the kill. I think Toecutter says, stop toying with him. And Bubba rides in, Max grabs the gun, shoots him off the motorcycle, kills Bubba, and then he stands up, and Toecutter just looks at him and hisses. I just love that. There's like no words, just a hiss, and then he's gone. It's like a Batman villain.
And, key to another key, they use essentially that same sequence and scene in Road Warrior. With the same thing, with Wes doing the big scream at him and then ride off on his motorcycle.
Oh, yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah. It's a scream more than a hiss, but yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't hiss. He doesn't have that much.
I don't know. That guy that plays the Toecutter, Hugh Keays-Byrne, he reminds me of, who is that wonderful actor that played King Tut on Batman?
Victor Buono.
Victor Buono. Yeah, he's also in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Yeah, that's who he reminds me of a bit. In the face.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Oh, and I have a key for that. He actually goes on and plays Immortan Joe. He's actually Immortan Joe in Fury Road.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. I knew he was in it. I just forgot that was his name. Yeah. Yeah, he is in it.
So he gets to be the bad guy in 2 Road Warrior movies. That's pretty good cred right there. Mm-hmm.
And they didn't ask Mel Gibson back.
What about your... Yeah. So you have some keys?
I do. I'm trying to think of where to start. Some of these are a little detailed, but I'll tell you what, I'll start with this one because you've already said it, kinda. George Miller has specifically said he was inspired by, and you mentioned earlier that it's about a boy and his car. Well, he said that it's inspired by A Boy and His Dog by Harlan Ellison.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that is set in a post-apocalyptic
I could definitely see that.
Mm-hmm.
Could definitely see that, definitely.
He also says it's a Western horror hybrid, which I would completely agree with, because that scene that I mentioned where all the motorcycles come into town is right out of High Noon.
See, that was going to be one of mine, was the whole Western influence in general, of even down to, even in this and Road Warrior, when Max walks, you hear the chink of his leg brace like spurs. Mm-hmm. You hear that shink every time he walks, sort of thing. So yeah. Okay,
I'll back off and let you do a couple so I don't steal them all.
No, those are good. I'll go with you because I don't have a lot written down for this because I'm mostly focused on Road Warrior more than Mad Max.
Well, I just wrote down as an aside that also that scene where all the motorcycles come into town is like the Wild One with Marlon Brando, and it is on motorcycles. Same situation. Mm-hmm. They come, everybody's scared. Marlon's in town with all his gang of motorcycle riders.
Yeah.
They smoke.
I mean, one of mine was the, I do like it does remind me of those, like I said, those 70s and 60s road race movies, whether they were race or whether they were road movies. Just because... that seems to be, that's the major, impetus for the entire plot. I also have. I had High Noon. I had that one too because it's a very Western influence in general. I think that's most of mine.
Okay, I've got a few more. These are some that I had to read about that I didn't know, but apparently there is a video game out there called Max Payne.
Oh, God, I love it.
And
Max Payne 1 and 2 are both great.
And apparently it was directly influenced from this film.
That would make sense.
Okay.
Yep.
I had to read that because I don't play
that would make total sense.
Games. And then there's a story in the Watchmen comics where Rorschach handcuffs a guy to a pipe and sets a house on fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's true. I had forgotten that. That's true.
I think Watchmen was written after this. I'm not sure which came first, but somebody was influenced
Watchmen
by the
was
other.
written in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
that makes perfect sense. That's pretty good.
And this one is for Lee Russell out there. He'll appreciate this. Marvel Comics, 5 years prior to the release of Mad Max, came out with a character called the Punisher. And his name was Frank Castle. He was a cop, and he was a vigilante because his family was slain. So I can't help but think...
So that's the whole story of Mad Max right there.
That they could have easily been influenced by Marvel Comics because they would have been over in Australia too. Which brings me to other movies, other vengeance movies like Death Wish, Straw Dogs.
Yeah.
And I even have this movie. I must have wrote it because I read it somewhere because I've never seen it, but Metal Storm. Oh, I know. One of the guys is in Metal Storm too. One of the actors. Wasn't it like
that would make sense.
Some Metal Storm, some kind of 3D movie from the 80s, like an apocalyptic thing. I'm sure you and I probably watched it drunk one night, but I don't remember it.
Yep.
I think that...
Well, all of those that were that type of vengeance movie, they had the female vengeance movies there for a while, which had stuff like
I Spit on Your Grave.
I Spit on Your Grave. Even the new one that came out, which actually was really, really good, called Revenge. It's just called Revenge.
Okay.
And it's been out like within a year or so. Mm-hmm. It's really good. But yeah, it's another one of those woman wronged, and now she's going to take it out on you and all of your evil buddies. Kind of thing. So it's that kind of Kill Bill. Kill Bill's both of them are a vengeance movie,
right,
from the very beginning,
right. The thing that has more in common with things like the 70s ones, like Death Wish, is that there's more car chases. You didn't get as like a lot of the car stuff in like the Tarantino movie, or even maybe I Spit on Your Grave. Because there's definitely a car connection.
I remember even in college, I took a film class, and the instructor kept talking about one of the best car chases in the world is in Bullet. It's so good, And at that time, a lot of other cinephiles and everything else were talking about Bullet and the chase scene in Bullet, or the chase scene in French Connection. Mm-hmm. And I was going, you guys have no clue. The best chase movies ever are George Miller's, no matter what he does. Mm-hmm. They're just amazing the way he does his chase movies.
Yeah. And, I meant, when we were talking about this, the way it's shot, I meant to ask you about this because this has been bothering me. Miller claims that they discovered 2 wide-angle lenses left over from, I think it's Peckinpah's movie The Getaway.
Getaway?
Yeah, and only one of them was in good enough shape for them to use. They were abandoned in Australia, apparently, because they were no longer any good. And so Miller found them and used them to make this movie. But I went online and researched The Getaway, and its filming locations are Texas and Arizona. So I'm like, how the fuck did these lenses end up in Australia?
I don't know.
I
don't know what the location. I mean,
somehow,
I've never seen Getaway, although I've heard it's good.
Yeah, it's Steve McQueen.
But that's interesting because Because that would be one of the wide-angle lenses, right? Not CinemaScope, but the anamorphic ones.
Yes.
Right? That's what that
and they couldn't afford it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and he says he swears he got it from, they were abandoned from the getaway shoot by Peckinpah. And I'm like, okay, he must have shot some of that in Australia. Well, I looked, and I can't find anywhere where he shot that in Australia.
Well, you may have found an inferior key.
Well, either that, George Miller did go to Hollywood briefly before making this movie, so maybe he went down to Texas. I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. But anyway, before we move on, though, to our second feature, let me give you a few of the awards and things. You will most be happy to know that this is on the 1001 Movies to See Before You Die list, as a lot of our films
Excellent. It should be.
The Australian Film Institute, it won Best Score, Best Sound, and Best Editing. The score is done by Brian May. It is not Brian May of Queen. It is a different Brian May. And I love the music in Road Warrior, but I think the music in Mad Max is kind of hokey.
It is. It is. That's one of my big differences in the two movies.
Yeah.
Is I think the music of Road Warrior is very Wagnerian and very big and very good. Sometimes overplayed, but really good compared to Mad Max, which I thought I didn't even know it had a composer. I thought Mad Max he had just used like library tracks for. I didn't know
It does.
that.
It sounds
So
like
interesting.
public domain music, like George used for Night
Yes.
of the Living Dead. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought too.
Yep.
And to
Exactly.
tie that into something else, I thought that the love scenes and that music were as hokey, if not hokier, than those love scenes with Bruce in The Evil Dead. You know what I'm talking about? With that hokey music. I'm like, this is so stupid.
That's a great key too. Yeah. For that scene. Here, take this necklace.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then before we cross over, I just wanted to say that this was the most profitable independent film of all time until The Blair Witch came along. So that's and I guess that may be because it's international, because I'm sure Halloween's up there somewhere too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what I had as far as awards and stuff. Most of the awards were Australian anyway, because, you know, it put Australia on the map as far as films.
Yes. Well, this movie and the one we're about to, Road Warrior, definitely need to be on everyone's science fiction list. Definitely. Just because they were so trend-setting, but they also are such a unique dystopian view in his own universe that he created and he continues to create in the franchise. And very well done.
Yeah, and it wasn't always going to be set that way. It ended up being set that way because there was not many people in the movie. He had to give an explanation kind of for that and for the desolate locales.
Right, and also the violence, I think.
Yeah.
I think he said it that way because people would buy into it's a violent, desperate world rather than, oh, this is just a motorcycle gang that's, acting like we always are afraid that motorcycle gangs will act.
He also hated the current police uniforms of Australians. He said they were so stupid looking. He wanted them to look cool, like leather.
They are cool. We didn't really talk about that, but yeah, I do like Max's costuming. I like the somebody online called it fetish gear.
It is,
but I do like
it's fetish gear.
But I do like the Max and his partner, Goose's uniforms. And then I like the way that it's a good segue. I like the way those uniforms are, and the whole costume design is treated in Road Warrior, especially. So enigmatic in Road Warrior. All of the costuming. The
halls of justice. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Which is a good segue. So 79 was Mad Max. It became so popular they immediately said, "Oh my God, you've got to do a sequel." And in 81, he had a little bit higher budget. It went from $350,000 to $2 million.
Yeah. Nice.
And then he took that $2 million and made one of the best, science fiction movies memorable to people ever, which is Road Warrior. Some people just refer to it as Road Warrior rather than Mad Max 2.
Yeah, there's a reason for
if you
that.
try to look at which is
Mad Max, even though it was released in the United States, was still a relatively unknown movie. So they were afraid that if they released it as Mad Max 2 here, like they did everywhere else, it wouldn't do as well. So they changed the name to Road Warrior. And now when you get it, like on DVD or whatever, it is back to the original title, Mad Max 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't realize that until the other day when I was watching it. I always thought it was just called The Road Warrior.
Yeah. And we kind of jumped. I mean, we basically, in between those two, we should have taken an intermission and played that whole "Let's All
that
Go
Monty
to the
Python
lobby,"
music,
song or whatever.
No, do that Monty Python music in Holy
that,
Grail.
so
La na 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 na.
But then, everybody, goes, you're at the drive-in, so go get your concession stands now, and we'll be back.
Let's all go to the concession stand.
So, 2 years later, for those of you who don't know the story, basically we return to the dystopian future. It's gotten much worse. We actually, in this entire movie, don't see any real civilization at all, unlike Mad Max, where we actually were in the city a lot. We basically follow Max as he comes across, first of all, a companion in the Gyro Captain, and then across another evil road gang that's out there that is terrorizing, essentially, a distillation process for gasoline. It's an oil rig that is actually producing gasoline. And they're having trouble and all of that. So they are at the mercy of of this gang, which is led by looks like a wrestler to me, but his name is Humungus.
He was a bodybuilder.
You could tell that part.
Yeah.
And basically Max kind of comes to the rescue. He gives them an option to, save themselves and get away from this situation. He's the one that leads the charge, and it ends with them all being essentially getting away and free, and Max just becoming this mythic hero. I do want to start by saying that I think the screenplay for this one is better than Mad Max, of course. I like the mythic elements of it. Almost my big key to start with is Conan, with ending, beginning and ending with this big prologue and epilogue voiceover of an older person saying, it's like he's telling their story kind of thing.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think the voiceover at the beginning is great. Who was the voice? I could not find that in any of my research. Who did the voice?
I didn't look. I thought I would have, though. We learn at the end of the film that it's actually the little feral boy grown up that's the part.
Right.
But I don't know who does the voice.
Yeah, it's very good. Mm-hmm. I like it in both the beginning and the end. I like the narrator's voice. It's kind of a combination of narration and previously on, or last week's episode, sort of thing, because it does kind of, if you missed Mad Max, you could watch Road Warrior and still enjoy the movie.
Yeah, it catches you up.
I think. Yeah, definitely.
I love the whole montage at the beginning. I don't mind it at all. I think it fits really, really well. Even the scenes they clip from the first movie in there.
Yeah, I think it's well done. He shows the highlights from Max, but also gives us a story. Max is much different now. He's obviously been roaming the wastelands for quite some time, and it has obviously taken a toll on him, both mentally and physically, sort of thing. He's still in his knee brace. He's still in his fetish garb, but now everybody else has decided to wear fetish garb.
Yeah, they look like us in Macbeth, running around in like football padding.
Well, see, there you took my key because, this was a huge key for our version of Macbeth when we said it post-apocalyptic. Yeah. So, but when was the first time? Did you see this one when it came out as well?
I'm pretty sure I saw this in a theater. I don't have as memorable a story as far as getting in to see it, because I would have been middle-aged by then, I guess. But I'm quite certain I saw it probably more than once on a big screen because I would have been inclined to see this movie again, for sure. I think I may have saw Mad Max more than once on the screen, too.
Well, it falls into, some of the criteria of the movies that we like, meaning you're thrown into the situation. You're not spoon-fed a lot of stuff. You're just, here we are, and we're going, and the plot's going, and you better catch up.
And medias res.
A smaller cast that actually has dialogue. Again, you kind of have to exclude all the drivers and stunt people and everything else.
And feral kids.
And feral kids. Do you excuse the feral kid? Do you like the feral kid?
I love the feral kid. I'm saying he doesn't have dialogue. You said you.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Other than the beginning and the end, well, he has no dialogue.
And it's interesting that, and I think I'm right, but I think at one point the leader of the white gang or the
Pappagallo,
the oil people.
Pappagallo is his name.
Well, no, is Pappagallo the leader or is he the one that's in the army uniform?
Pappagallo is the blonde-haired leader, the one that gets shot by the arrow in the leg.
Yeah. Okay, so at one point when he's trying to get Max to to drive the tanker, he actually calls him Max. But I don't think anybody else calls him Max in the entire movie.
I didn't even notice.
I don't even think.
That's funny.
And so that started me thinking. They call the feral kid at one point because the girl goes, "Kid, get inside," and then. But they never refer to the gyro captain by any kind of name. Feral kid, really by any other name. I would not have known whatever you just said,
Pappagallo.
As because I don't think that name was ever mentioned verbally in the movie. It's all
it was. One of those warrior women called him that.
Okay.
And that woman's name is Warrior Woman. She doesn't have a name.
Yes. See what I mean? Well, the other girl in it is called Captain's Girl. That's her name in the credits. The little cute blonde kind of thing. And so I was just curious. Names didn't seem to... It goes along with what we're talking about just being thrown into this plot. They don't even take time to even give you the names. You just have to go.
If you translate Pappagallo into Spanish, it's parrot, which I think is kind of funny. Parrot. I meant to mention earlier when we were talking about Mad Max, what's with all the bird imagery? Like the cuts of the flapping birds in between scenes? That always kind of... I was always kind of like, why do they do that?
Flight, fast, move, whatever, something like that, I guess.
Anyway.
What was I going to say? I was curious about... I didn't even know Wes. I saw in the credits Wes, and I went, okay, Wes. But in my notes, I call him Mohawk Guy because I didn't really know until I actually went on to IMDb that his name was actually Wes. Because they never say Wes.
Yeah, they call him that. I think somebody calls him that when his boyfriend gets hit with the boomerang. I think sometime in there, maybe he gets called Wes.
Maybe, or maybe Humungus calls him that before he chokes him out. Or
something
whatever.
Like that.
I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't know that was his name either until I looked it up. But then I did hear him when I was watching it say it. Mm-hmm. Just like I heard Pappagallo, because I was like, I don't remember these names. And then I heard them later.
I think this is one of the most successful sequels ever, not only financially, but just as far as continuing the story. Mm-hmm. I think it does an excellent job of that, and makes it even more fuller, richer, better, that sort of thing. I actually had some cast notes when we go to cast.
Good, because I have none. However, I do have some background.
Yes, please.
Well, you mentioned it was budgeted at $2 million. The opening weekend in the United States made $2,527,864.
Well, we made our money back
in just the U.S. So I noticed that it came out in the summer of 1982, and that is a summer I remember very well because it was a huge summer for movies. That's when Wrath of Khan came out. It's like when I think Gremlins came out. There was a bunch of movies that came out that summer. I just remember it being an all-star summer. So, and this is one of the ones I would have seen multiple times up there with Wrath of Khan.
Oh, definitely. I think that whole year, wasn't that The Thing too? That was The Thing, E.T.
E.T. was definitely
that was all in
there.
82.
Yeah. I can't remember if The Thing was in there or not, but yeah, it was a big.
Well, remember
big
The Thing and remember Carpenter's The Thing and E.T. opened a week apart.
Oh, that's right.
Remember?
That's right. You're right. So it would have been The Thing. So there was a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Great year.
It was mostly shot in sequence, which is rare for an action movie. But I thought that was kind of unusual. And they had 80 custom vehicles designed, and more than half were demolished. And and lastly, over 200 stunts.
Yeah.
And great ones, man. Guys flying off of motorcycles and like spinning in the air like pinwheel. Just awesome stuff.
Okay. Interesting you say that, because that's one of my notes. Is that actually was an accident? That was actually an injury on set that they kept on screen. Remember,
he died?
We talked about in the no, he massively
his leg,
shattered both of his legs.
God, it's a great stunt.
But it's a great stunt. Yeah. Several stunts in this are just amazing. And I wonder if Miller actually designs his vehicles to, come apart and explode, because he has such great wrecks or crashes.
Well, he did in, I don't know about this movie, but in Mad Max, when they hit that little, they call it a go-go buggy or something, but it's that blue van, and he hits it, and it just spins like 3 times. They purposely took all the guts out of it to make it light, and they stacked cans of milk on it to make it heavy, and because it was supposed to look like paint and was easier to clean up. And so I know they specifically designed that one light to make it do what it did. So I'm sure he probably did some of that in this movie as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I liked, there's a grittiness that Miller puts in all of his movies, but I think it's more so true in this one. It's just a very, the explosions and the crashes are very visceral. Getting shot with the arrows is very visceral. Just the way he does his violence works for me in this. His editing, of course, is phenomenal all the way through this, but I even like the audio in this a lot. Like I said, I think it has very Wagnerian music. It's got an actual theme, which I don't think any of the other movies even have a Mad Max theme. But you hear it at the beginning, you hear it in the middle, and then you hear it at the very end when he says that's the last we heard of him or whatever.
I like that you use the word Wagnerian, because it is very Wagner-esque as far as
yes,
dun 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 dun, but underneath the motor roar, yeah.
Right, and all that sweeping blom, blom, blom. It's very Holtz the Planets kind of sound. It's very orchestral and big, and I like that. Sound-wise, I did come across a note that said that the opening narration that we both like and the montage and everything is all done in mono, but then as soon as they cut to the close-up of the interceptor going and charging up, it goes to Dolby full 5.0 soundtrack.
Ironic that we're having this discussion. I just read a note that said, the music is so much better.
Oh, yes.
Underlined.
So much better.
Yeah.
I think overall, I mean, this, like I said, I think this is one of the best sequels in history. It builds on the original. It takes it better. It takes it farther. It does it better overall. The stunts are better. The chases are stronger. The pacing is great. The costuming is better.
It's supposedly set 5 years later. I did read that.
But the story goes back to what we talked about with Max. It's a very simple story, told very simplistically, but just told really dynamically. I mean, I didn't count. I don't know, but I don't think Max has 25 lines in this entire movie.
No,
and
he has 16, and 2 of them is, I only came for the gas. That's seriously 16 lines.
I do have, and I've used it repeatedly in the decades since then, but you want out of here, you talk to me. That's one of my favorite lines in movie history.
Yeah.
I just love it. Him just sitting there on the truck, just going, okay, now that you guys have done all your stuff, let me tell you what we need to do.
Right. You said you had some casting stuff. What do you have casting-wise?
Well, interestingly, the girl that plays Warrior Woman is Virginia Hay. Virginia Hay went on to play Zahn in Farscape. The blue girl. Do you remember Farscape?
I remember it, but I didn't really watch it.
Oh, it's really good. You should watch it. It's good. It uses like hints and Muppets in very realistic alien ways, much better than like Yoda even. But pretty cool story, but very Australian, British kind of sci-fi.
Okay.
So it kind of gets trippy and weird at times, but it's really good.
She's the woman with the crimped hair.
Yeah, she the one that they literally call Warrior Woman. She always stands. She's in
well, there's
white.
also that blonde with the ponytail that Gyro Captain's hitting on, and I get them confused sometimes.
Well, right, and she's in the credits. She's actually called Captain's Girl.
Okay.
What was very unique about her, and I've tried to do some more research and can't find anything. Her name was Artie Whiteley or Whitley, but she died just a few years later. She died at 37.
Wow.
And I couldn't find anything about how she died or whatever. So maybe it was, I don't know, could it be drug related or something bad and they don't want anybody to know or whatever?
Well, you know that Australia is host to most of Earth's venomous insects and animals. Sorry.
The most poisonous species on the planet.
That's exactly what came to my head when you said it. Ooh, did she get bit by a spider? Ugh.
Yeah. What else did I have casting-wise? I did have your note, which is Kjell Nilsson, who's Swedish, was Humungus. He was a weightlifter, bodybuilder like Arnold. Bruce Spence, who played the Gyro Captain. Right. I did not know this until I did some research, but found out, but went on to do a tremendous amount of television. Not in America, but British and Australian television.
Right.
I mean, like season after season after season of different series. So very, very popular. And then again, of course,
I just remember being so grossed out by his green teeth when I was watching it in the theater. And then I think it's funny that you mentioned that he was Max's comrade when half the movie he's in chains because Max is like leading him around on a leash.
Yeah. But he keeps saying, "You and me, we've got something, mate. We've got something else together."
Partners. We're partners. Yeah.
We're partners. Yeah. Of course, I do have the big note of, okay, I am so sorry, but how did he get the cute blonde girl? There is no way in frickin' hell that he got the cute blonde girl. No. Not with those teeth. No. Just didn't happen.
I can tell you something I find funny as far as a scene. I love the scene where the guy's on top of the truck with Warrior Woman, and all of a sudden he's on fire, and he's just patting himself, going, "I'm all right. I'm all right."
Yeah.
He's on fire.
Oh his leg is on fire, and both his hands are on fire. Yeah. I agree with that. I love the scene where Feral Boy first attacks and cuts off, kills the boyfriend.
Scene. That is so good.
And then, yes,
it's so well timed out. The way the joke plays out, it's just great. The way it happens.
Yeah, I like the whole scene with when he first meets Gyro Captain. The way that whole setup is done, with he's buried himself and it's a trap, and the snake is like his pet and all that. I thought that was really cool.
I like when he drops that snake in that guy's buggy. That's pretty fucking cool.
Oh, yeah. Well, all the action sequences are what they are. They're just really good, except I don't really see the good part of the flamethrower on the mount sort of thing, because you keep shooting the same guy that's up there. Whoever's up there, you're shooting. And it doesn't really have a lot of range. But anyway, but I did have a question of, knowing how guerrilla warfare they do stuff, do you think, like, the shots where Max is hurt and the Gyro Captain picks him up and he flies him back, and it's actually this great shot of looking down at Max and we can see underneath him the ground, and
correct,
we see the bad gang, and then we see the good gang and everything else. Do you think they really filmed that in a gyrocopter?
No, they filmed it in a helicopter. And the whole reason...
A real helicopter.
Yeah, the whole reason why they wrote the gyrocopter into the script was so that they could have a helicopter, because they knew it would be a must to film the action sequences. Because there's a lot of aerial shots in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's what I was going to say, because like when he first finds Gyro Captain, it's that great big overhead shot of the car and him, and then all that distance, and then the copter.
Right.
And he's slowly walking over to it, and it's that overhead shot, which is really Hitchcocky and cool, kind of thing.
And somewhere I read where Miller even joked that it's quite obvious that gyrocopter would not support two people.
Yeah,
so
probably
the
not.
scene when Max is being flown back, they've just got him like hanging out of a helicopter and they're filming it or something.
Yeah. Looks cool though.
It does look
really.
It's like a platoon shot. It's like a shot from a Vietnam movie or whatever, where they're.
Dang you! I had that key.
Oh really?
Damn!
It just popped into my head. I wasn't really thinking about it. It could be Forrest Gump.
MASH, but you had Forrest Gump.
Yeah, whatever. It looks like a war movie where they're in a helicopter. Yeah.
You got shot, man.
Right in the buttocks. Something bit me.
I was really sad about Max's car. And I thought the Interceptor was such an iconic piece of him. And for them to totally just blow it up was, sad.
Yeah.
Great refinery explosions. I think that a refinery explosion should go down as one of the biggest explosions ever filmed, because it looked so realistic. It looked real. I mean, pieces falling everywhere and shot from like 6 different angles. So that was really cool.
I wrote down amazing stunts that still make me gasp.
Yes. Yeah. And the jump scares in this. I was going to talk to you about those, like in the beginning when he opens up the tanker car and the body falls out. That's a big jump scare.
Yeah.
And then when Wes jumps up and grabs Feral Boy, I mean, that's a big jump scare.
There's jump scares in Mad Max too, like when the hand falls out in the hospital. But
yep.
I hadn't got to awards. Obviously, sound is amazing in this movie, and that whole scene that you just described with the little boy on the hood going to get that shotgun shell. And you've been hearing all these loud explosions and loud music and loud engines, and then all of a sudden it's like no sound, just a heartbeat.
Just wind. Yeah.
And then, of course, the jump scare of the guy jumping up and grabbing him. That scene just blows me away. That scene stands out to me probably more than any other in this movie.
Yeah. Well, and there's another one that's very... there is one scene that's kind of weird to me, but it's also so iconic that I can't say it doesn't belong. And it's the whole scene where they're doing the crucifixion on the hill and setting the people on fire. And Humungus is just there with it looks like firelight on him, and he's doing his typical warrior poses of, I'm going to crush you, and I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to eat you, or whatever. You
had your chance.
It's a little weird the way they do that montage and showing them like spinning out in motorcycles. And I kept going, okay, if gas is so precious, why are you showing off by doing spins and all of that? But it's so iconic. I mean, I even got a key out of it, which was, Planet of the Apes.
Exactly. I was just writing that down. Big X's. That's so funny. Because they are X's.
Yeah, them strung up. Oh, yeah.
Like the X's in the Forbidden Zone.
I was going, okay, that is so iconic. Let me ask you a question from a literary standpoint. Do you think Max is a hero or an anti-hero?
I want to say he's a little bit of both. I mean, he started out as a good guy, and he started off as a policeman. He turned to vengeance because of what happened to him. But now he does some things, without even thinking twice about them, that are killing people. So he's kind of a little bit of both, I would think. If you consider an anti-hero being, kind of, a little bit of a sociopath.
Yeah, I kind of, because there were a couple of things in this, and I was going, okay, this is like a subliminal key. It just came to me, but was Snake Plissken, from Escape from New York.
Correct.
And also MacReady in The Thing, and both of them are essentially anti-heroes. They're there for their own interests, not for anybody else, but then they have to give in and help people.
Well, they're also
like their conscience gets the best of them.
Right. They're anti-heroes in that they're not the heroes of yesteryear that are good-looking and can do no wrong and flawless and all that BS. These guys are human, their bones break, and they kill people.
Yeah, they're like heroic evil. No, I don't mean that. But you know what I mean? They're like...
I know what you mean. I mean, they're my kind of hero, They're the ones that, that I would do what they do,
Well, a key, you just gave me one, Daryl from Walking Dead.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Is like that. He's that same way. I'm going to survive, and I'm going to do what has to be done.
In all honesty, Rick is more...
I'll save that little kid, too.
I mean, Rick is Mad Max. He was a cop, and he's in the apocalypse. He's on a horse now. But I don't guess Mad Max was ever on a horse, but he would be if they did another movie, probably.
But yeah, wow, that's a great key.
Yeah,
that's a great
he's
one.
Rick Grimes.
Yeah, I just had that as a question. I thought that was very interesting.
No, I love the evolution of that type of character. I mean, any kind of character work is going to fall in my favor because I usually raise that above anything, including plot. So,
well, and even the way Tom Hardy has taken the character now, I like that. I like the way this character through the franchise has changed and evolved, which is really good. I do have a great line from it, other than my favorite line, which is "You want out here, you talk to me." But the one that, what's his name? Papa
Pappagallo.
Grandy, Papa Carlotto.
Rowan Mortensen.
Rowan Morton. Morrison. Yes.
Okay, for that in joke, you'll have to go a few episodes back to The Wicker Man. But his name is Pappagallo.
Yes. Pappagallo. But when he's trying to goad Max into doing it, he's talking about you're no better than them and everything. And one of his lines I wrote down was, "You're a maggot living on the corpse of the old world." I really thought that was a cool line.
It is.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's almost a little too descriptive for a movie, but yeah.
Hey, Shakespeare, Shakespeare, man. It happens. What about keys? Do you have, what key? I mean, we've already been busting a bunch. What do you have for this?
Well, I think it's appropriate that first we will just go ahead and use it again because it's even more literally so a boy and his dog, because now Max has a dog.
Yes. Yeah. And I have one that comes off of that, which is, John Wick, which is don't kill my dog. You kill my dog, I'm going to get real upset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the you're going to kill me for doing this one, but I have to because there's so much. But this movie reminds me so much of Star Wars. It's uncanny.
Really?
Yeah, mainly from the wipes that he does for scene transitions. They do those wipes in Star Wars. And it's also, filmed around the same time, so the stock looks the same. And it's in a desert, so it looks like Tatooine, and you've got those wipes. But the whole bartering, okay, I'll get your gas, but this is all I want, is pure Han Solo. I mean, he is Han Solo in this movie as well. So I get a huge Star Wars vibe from this movie.
Well, it actually is more, yes, I get a Star Wars vibe, and I give you that, but it was filmed around the same time as Empire, not as Star Wars.
Right.
Because it was filmed in 81. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that. And the wipes were something that Lucas kind of brought back, and I could see that in this. Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I have, the scene where it's, all right, everybody, your jobs, get ready, we're leaving tonight, and they suddenly go into the let's repair all of our machine montage, reminds me of all of the let's prep all of our gun montages from like Aliens and Die Hard and everything else, when they're like, get everything together, and it's a big montage of everybody working together and we're under a time limit, we've got to hurry.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because James Cameron says that this film directly influenced the Terminator, and there's probably scenes like that in Terminator as well as Aliens, I would think.
So that'd be cool. Yeah, I could see that.
Also, I mentioned Spielberg I mentioned George Lucas. Sorry, wrong person. But Spielberg, upon seeing this movie, did nab George Miller to do Twilight Zone, and because he thought he would be perfect to do that last installment, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Oh, yeah.
So Twilight Zone is a bit of a key as well, because it was probably one of the first commercial American movies, I think, that George Miller did.
Yeah, that makes sense. The violence in it I've got is very reminiscent of like late 60s, early 70s violence. Like when they're doing the whole attack and rape thing and they're looking at through the binoculars.
Yeah,
it's done with just enough to show us, but all implied. Like you said earlier, a lot of implied violence without actually showing the violence.
Yeah, they show some nudity in this one,
kind of thing.
But yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that scene's not unlike a scene in my novel, now that I think about it.
Having to watch it. Yeah.
I mentioned in the original movie Mad Max that there's a scene where the motorcycles come to town, and it's a hell of a lot like the scene in High Noon where the bad guys come to town. This movie has a direct relation to another Western movie with the Feral Kid and Shane, the Alan Ladd Western. about.
Oh yeah, Shane would be a great one for
the
that.
bad guy hero / relationship with the kid. Same kind of dynamic there going on in this movie and in Shane.
Well, and in general, I mean, you think about it, the Western motif is totally there. I mean, essentially, Max is the gunslinger who comes into town, and you're going to have to work with him in order to rid yourself. So it could even be like all the way up through Vengeance, or no, is it Vengeance? Wasn't that the no? What was the Unforgiven, or the Clint Eastwood one, or any of those, even modern Westerns that have happened. So yeah, definitely could see that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to check through notes to make sure I don't forget.
I've got some that Miller cited other than A Boy and His Dog that I found kind of curious. He cites Akira Kurosawa's samurai films. He also mentions Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces, which makes total sense to me. Especially when we were on the whole
but that's very true.
Anti-hero discussion. And then he also cites A Clockwork Orange, which I would cite Clockwork Orange for the language. Sometimes they use words you don't understand, and it's the same way with the Burgess novel as well as the Kubrick film. They speak in a
could
little bit of
that a little bit. I think I don't know. I think there's a lot more world building in Clockwork than there is in this, really. But there is some similarity, I guess. Yeah. I thought it was interesting that they masked their villain the entire way through. They never took his mask off, so you never really saw what Humungus looked like without his mask.
It makes me wonder if they dubbed his voice. Because maybe he's just not an actor.
Well, I think they definitely dubbed Wes's because it doesn't sound the same at all.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like that voice should come from that body.
Which is funny because he went on to do other films. He's in that Metal Storm movie I was telling you about.
Yeah. Let's see my other note. I've got a game key.
Okay.
This reminds me a lot of the game Fallout. That whole survival afterwards kind of feel to it. And you're you as playing the game, you're the lone gunslinger who has to go into town and decide who you're going to help, who you're not, what you're going to do, that sort of thing. So it reminded me of that a lot.
I'm not familiar.
Oh, Fallout's fun. It's a fun game. Yeah.
You also have the obvious ones, Fury Road and Beyond Thunderdome, which are direct sequels.
Of course.
Yes. And then I've never seen this movie, but I strongly suspect Waterworld is probably influenced by this somehow.
Oh, yeah, definitely down to even the designs, except they wear more aquatic kind of stuff, but the shoulder pads, that kind of armor, that sort of thing, that's very Waterworld. I could see that.
Yeah, I'm not a Kevin Costner fan, so c'est la vie.
Yeah, me either. I did see a note. I just found a note that says that they had to alert aircraft and surrounding mines when they blew up the explosion because the shock waves went for miles. So that's cool.
I've got an interesting note that you might find curious. You were just mentioning, or we were both mentioning, that Humungus is masked the entire time. Originally, when Miller was writing the script with a guy named Terry Hayes, who went on to do Dead Calm, he envisioned Humungus to be Jim Goose, that he had survived the fire and that he was burned and scarred and now a villain.
Oh. See, would that not have made a great reveal during that last chase?
Right.
Oh, man. That would,
So
that would have been cool. Like, I have to admit, that's pretty cool.
But they didn't do it.
That would have been a great idea.
But
I had a thought, though, and I've thought about it different times I've seen this movie. One is, the question would be, does Max know what he's protecting? So,
as far as the gas or his humanity, or
no, the gas, yeah, because I look at it and go, okay, seems like he would know, even by the vehicle itself, whether it had gas in it or not, and or was privy to the plot coming from Pappagallo. Yeah.
Rowan Morrison.
That it was a ruse. We know that's what they'll chase, so that's why we want you to be the patsy kind of thing. Knowing it makes him even more of a heroic guy, knowing that he probably won't survive, sort of thing. Or based on that last scene when he gets out of the truck and goes over and looks down and sees the dirt pouring out and you see his face, is that him just realizing it there? And I've kind of felt both ways different times I've seen this movie. What do you think?
I think that, it's the reveal that the truck he was driving was sand is pure poetic irony.
Oh God!
I mean, that's the main reason that's there. But then, are you asking me whether or not he knew he was the decoy?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's kind of what he wanted to set up with the movie, is that we don't know whether he knew or not.
Right. Again, it's that simple plot told in a kind of very differentiated, cool way.
And I mean, and he did drive off and abandon them to begin with. So maybe, if he did know, he knew he was going to be off and alone again. It was just, this was his job to get out.
Yeah, I kind of saw both. I saw him, I lost my car, I lost my dog, so who cares? If this is a suicide mission, I'll take it. I'm the only one that really could and save these stupid people because they're all blondes.
Right.
Or whatever.
Well, and the boy grows up to lead the colony by the sea, and he says he never saw the man again. So obviously their paths never crossed again. So
Right. And I like the fact that whether he knew, of leaving it ambiguous, but like I said, different times I've watched this movie, I've seen both. I've seen Max know and have the resolve that it doesn't matter. I just need to get you far enough away to give them time so you can never find them. Because you're never going to get the gas because I don't have it. And then I've thought of the other one where he doesn't realize that until the very end, and he crawls out and looks at it and goes,
well, and they...
Okay, yeah, you got one up on me. You're smart. That was good.
And they come and get the boy. So, I mean, it's not like he didn't have a chance to go with them.
Yeah, Gyro Captain comes and gets Feral Boy.
Right.
Yeah.
No. I thought the Feral Boy was in the back of a bus at the end, driving off.
He is, but that's only because the Gyro Captain comes in.
Okay. I thought maybe there was more to it than that. But
yeah, he ends up in the bus, and so does Blonde Girl, and the guy driving the bus is Gyro Captain. Because the voiceover says that he actually becomes the first leader
right.
of the group. And then Feral Boy becomes the leader of the northern tribe later on or whatever.
I've got an interesting story for a segue about Thunderdome. Did you know that
Please?
It didn't originally start out to be a Mad Max movie?
No.
George Miller was working on an apocalyptic version of Lord of the Flies, where the kids end up getting rescued by a man. And then he thought, oh, well, this might as well be Max. And he changed it. I thought that was hilarious.
Well, that worked.
Because he was basically trying a new version, like a post-apocalyptic version of Lord of the Flies, but a hero has to come in, and he just all of a sudden realized, wait, I'm doing the sequel. I might as well do a Mad Max movie out of this. And that's how it was born.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
I did not know that.
But I didn't, like I said, that's my least favorite of all the movies. And, people have heard from us in the past how much I love children. in movies.
Yes, always. You love them.
Just love them. Love to see them not
That's
in
why
movies.
you would go looking for Rowan Morrison, because she was missing.
Right. I've got a few awards. Nothing major because, again, a lot of these were Australian awards. But the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror, it won International Film, but it was nominated for Actor, Supporting, Director, Writing, and Costumes. And then in the Australian Film Institute, it won Director, Sound, Production Design, Costume Design, and Editing, and was nominated for Score and Cinematography. So, obviously, the Australians gave it more than we did, but that's fine, because it deserves them.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It does deserve them. Now, so I guess as we're getting to the wrap, is this one in the 1001?
I did not see that it was, but I can't imagine that it's not. I could look real quick.
Yeah, I mean, it should be because we can't cover it if it's not,
Oh, yeah. No. There are movies we do that are not. And there will be movies that we do that are not.
Funny.
But that doesn't mean that they're not worth seeing. I just find it interesting that most of the ones we do are.
Well, yeah, because I think part of the whole thing is they're influential,
It does. I have to go by year. This came out in 80 something. They do them numerically by year.
Oh, okay. So you need to look.
Yeah,
at
you don't have
81,
to buy the book for anyone interested in this. I will put the link in the show notes. It's 1001films.fandom.com/wiki/the list. And 1981. Wow, there's a lot. American Werewolf, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Das Boot, Gallipoli, which is another another Mel Gibson movie. Chariots of Fire, Body Heat, Man Iron, Reds, Three Brothers, E.T., The Evil Dead. No, it's not in there. Idiots. Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Should be.
Oh, Poltergeist also came out. Here's your
skull.
82 movies. E.T. and Poltergeist and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And Blade Runner.
All of them.
And Tootsie. And The Thing. There's just a ton of them. Yeah.
Yeah. 82 was a great year. I used to say 82 was like, what was the other one? 52? Because 52 had all the great movies.
I don't know about 52, but 39 was a year. 39 was like Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, The Stagecoach. A bunch of good ones came out in 1939.
Definitely.
So, but anyway,
definitely.
I think that's going to do it for our double feature. We're running a little long.
Our first double feature.
Yeah, but that's cool.
That's great though. Cool. As always, as we wrap and close, we want to thank all of you guys for listening to us. Thank you for favoriting us, starring us, subscribing, doing all those things that you do, giving us even a one-sentence review helps. And consider being a Patreon member, of course. We always have to ask for that. I mean, one of the things that Tim and I are both really proud of is that you notice when you listen to us, you never stop for advertising. You never have to hear brought to you by or whatever, because we're doing it all ourselves and just with help from you guys. So thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, and amidst all the tomfoolery of us in this current situation, at least at the time of this recording, everybody out there be safe. We hope you are well. And, well, if you've got plenty of time, you've got plenty of podcasts to listen to. So
catch up on them, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, I'll see you, David.